Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Isaac Hunter. I am a lead historian here at Edison and Ford Winter Estates, and I am here to talk about the concrete truth, the rise and fall of the Edison Portland Cement Company. So, I do have a few terms to know, since maybe not everybody is in the know on cement terms and concrete. So, I have some right here. Cement, for example, it is a powder. It's made up of alumina, silica, lime, iron oxide, magnesium oxide, all these different things burned together in a kiln, finely pulverized, and then you use the cement as an ingredient for mortar or concrete. And then concrete is the hard, strong building material that's made by mixing a cementing material such as Portland cement and a mining aggregate such as sand and gravel. And then I also have lime on here, and I'm not talking about the fruit. So lime it's a caustic, highly infusible solid that consists of calcium oxide, often together with magnesium oxide, that is obtained by calcining forms of calcium carbonate, such as shells or limestone. And limestone's really the big one for a number of cement companies. They just get limestone, and this is used in the process as well. And you see here, I have a Edison Portland Cement Company bag. All right. The foundations of history. So we're starting way back in ancient Rome. Emperor Augustus here. I found Rome a city of bricks, which means it was already built. Rome, the eternal city, as it's called, its history still stands strong due to a large number of buildings, statues, and monuments that still exist today. And the secret lies with Roman experts in engineering, architecture, and concrete. So Roman concrete. As we can see, we have the Colosseum here, and we even have a little slab of Roman concrete. Ancient Roman concrete was made up of chunks of volcanic tuff, and it was brick bound together by volcanic ash and lime mortar. So it used volcanic ash, and that's really a big part of it. This material brought with it endurance and longevity. Unfortunately, even though they did so much, the empire was so wide-spanning, Rome would fall. And with the fall of Rome would also come the fall of Roman cement. This knowledge was lost for centuries. Thankfully, one Latin scholar, a guy named Vitruvius. We have a little image here of Vitruvius. You might have heard of the Vitruvian Man. Vitruvius was an engineer, highly regarded at the time, a builder and engineer, and he wrote a book, a manuscript called De Architectura, and it was the only treatise on architecture that survives today from antiquity. And so the father of proportions, he was so good with the proportions of buildings and architecture that when Da Vinci drew that man, the perfect proportions of a man, he called it the Vitruvian Man after this gentleman. Uh, Ultimately, his works survived, and 2,000 years later, following the fall of Rome, guided by the teachings of Vitruvius, a man would begin his search for the lost secret to cement. Edison? Eddie Stone. So Eddystone, the Eddystone Lighthouse, that's what's in this picture today. We're going to talk about this lighthouse briefly. So off the coast of Plymouth, England, there's this clump of rocks called the Eddystone Rocks, and that is where a lighthouse would be built in 1696 is when it would start. And this first lighthouse would survive for 4 years until ultimately it was leveled by the Great Storm of 1703. Ultimately, it would be rebuilt again. 3 years following the destruction of the first lighthouse, the construction of a new one would commence. This second lighthouse would survive for the next 50 years. Pretty nice, this Eddystone Lighthouse. Unfortunately, disaster would strike again. This time, it would get caught fire, and it would burn down in 1755. That leads us to John Smeaton, the father of civil engineering as he's known. After the last lighthouse destruction, John Smeaton was hired due to just understand all of the concrete and the way that we could build this lighthouse to survive not only potential fires, but especially the degradation of the cement and rock from the seawater, as this is out in open ocean. He was a civil engineer and a mathematician, and he would study cement and concrete, and he sought to use English limes, limestone, lime mortar, like we talked about earlier, for the building of the foundation, But when he tried to make the cement, it would not harden under the water, under the seawater. And initial test failures led Smeaton on a deep dive of understanding all he could about limestone and cement. As it's said, necessity is the mother of invention. He needed a way to find this, make this lighthouse work. And so this would bring him all the way back to the beginning to Rome. He discovered that limestone containing clay would actually set and harden underwater. This was made possible when he made cement using blue lime from Aberthaw, Wales, and actually going down to Rome or nearby Rome and getting volcanic ash from Civita Vecchi near Rome, so right next to it, right on the coastline there. And so basically combining old with new, he was able to create this new quick lime that hardens underwater, and it was called hydraulic lime. Uh, with Smeaton's newfound knowledge, a new lighthouse was built. This lighthouse survived for the next 150 years, showing this advancement in the science of cement. And actually, it still stands to today. It's no longer out on on the rocks, the Eddystone rocks, and that's because the rocks themselves started to fall apart. So it's outlived the rocks it was built on. And so they decided this historic monument, they would bring it inland. And so now it is a standing tower inland, no longer used as a lighthouse. It's called Smeaton's Tower. But a new lighthouse would be built that still stands today. That new one was built in 1879 using similar cement science. This is an image of the four lighthouses here. So Roman cement. This is new Roman cement. After the success of the Eddystone Lighthouse, it would lead to a new understanding and research on cement and hydraulic lime. Another Englishman, a guy named James Parker, would patent new nodules of clay that were burnt and then crushed into a powder mixed with water to create a mortar stronger than any of the other cement at the time. He called his substance Roman cement. And then we get natural cement. It is similar but different to Portland cement, which we're going to talk about in the chemical makeup and creation. But natural cement was relatively simple to manufacture, and it would soon hit the market in large quantities. It was not always reliable or strong. It would become the leading cement in the United States, though, until the 20th century, really following the Civil War is when cement construction in the United States would really grow and expand. So in 1818, Fayetteville, New York, a man named Canvas White, he discovered cement rock that could be made into natural cement, and he used this to build the Erie Canal. The state would purchase his patent for on the manufacture of cement, and the success of the Erie Canal would lead to an increase in canal construction and therefore an increase in popularity of cement all throughout the United States. And ultimately, natural cement will kind of stand king here until the year 1900, when Portland cement would kind of get turned to be the more favorable cement. And so Portland cement, where does that name come from? It's not Portland, Oregon. So in 1824, experiments on artificial hydraulic lime would finally see fruition. A guy named Joseph Aspdin, who's kind of considered one of the pioneers of Portland cement. He would call this cement he worked on Portland cement because it resembled in color the building stone from the Isle of Portland, which is over in the British Isles. Whether he was the first to discover Portland cement is debated. There was another Englishman in 1822 named James Frost that also made a similar material with hydraulic lime. He called it British cement, but and that second guy would actually be the first one to create a cement factory. But we get to the Iron Age. And so this is the story of Thomas Edison. It begins with his iron ore milling company. Created in 1881, the Edison Ore Milling Company utilized Thomas Edison's patents in electromagnetism. Essentially, he wanted to crush a bunch of rocks, and then he would take this powdered rock, bring it through a hopper, and he had magnets that would actually attract the iron particles outside of this crushed sand. And he could make iron briquettes out of this iron. And here we do have a picture of Thomas Edison at his ore concentrating plant in Ogdensburg, New Jersey. Unfortunately, while it did survive for a few many years, this is actually the patent drawing of this magnet that takes out the iron. You can see the two streams of sand there. Ultimately, after 2 decades of investing in the ore milling company, it would start to go under. And a big part of this was there were new iron mines kind of discovered throughout the United States, and this actually caused the iron to get cheaper. And these new companies were seen as more favorable to purchase iron from these new mines. And so ultimately, Thomas Edison, he found himself making more profit from just selling the crushed up sand, the leftover pieces, to local cement companies so that they could make cement with his sand. Uh, Realizing the potential of using this sand and making his own cement company, he began researching all he could on the topic. Thomas Edison, if you know much about him, he loves to go on deep dives. He wants to understand every single thing he can about a topic. He read books on cement. He went understood. He talked to local cement manufacturers, and then he soon created his own theories on a way to manufacture a more reliable and better product. Here we have the Edison Portland Cement logo there. So in 1899, shortly after the closing of the ore milling company, Thomas Edison would establish the Edison Portland Cement Company. The company was organized with the following officers. William H. Shelmerdine was president, and Walter S. Mallory was vice president of the company. Reduce, reuse, recycle. This is actually his Ogdensburg, the ore milling company image right here. When Thomas created the Edison mill in New Village, New Jersey to produce cement, it was right next to the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania where he could acquire a large amount of limestone. And he happened to already have a bunch of mining machinery that he could use to harvest this limestone, which he previously used for rocks. And he had all of this equipment for crushing, drying, roasting, screening, all of these different materials. And so he just took everything from his ore milling company and brought it over to his new cement company, which is pretty clever of him. Over the next few years, he would study this ancient history of cement. And ultimately, he decided that the way that current companies were doing it, they have these huge cement kilns. Thomas Edison thought he could do it even better by getting an even larger cement kiln, because bigger is better. So rotary kilns are an important part of the cement process. They are used to heat the crushed limestone and clay into clinker, and then clinker is what you grind into cement. And the largest rotary kiln at the time was usually about 60 feet in size. Normally, it would produce about 150 to 200 barrels in 24 hours. Thomas Edison, he said, I got to do this even better. He wanted to build one capable of producing 1,000 barrels at a time. And so he would actually double the size of the kiln. He wanted to build one 120 feet in size, the standard kiln, and then use two high pressure coal guns to heat it. Nice quote from Thomas here. Many inventors try to develop things life size and thus spend all their money instead of first experimenting on a small scale. And so he started small. Bigger than ever, starting small. In January of 1900, Thomas would start with a sketch of this new 120-foot kiln. He would then follow it up with a wooden model made to a smaller scale, and then he would experiment on this model with rotation speeds, lining materials, all this stuff to fully understand and make it work before he fully ordered a full-scale kiln created. And here we have a little the patent image for one of his kilns. So it was a slow start. In 1901, Thomas Edison decided to further lengthen his kiln from 120 to 150 in order to second kiln for the plant. So he was going big or going home. Full testing would not really start until 1902. There were a lot of delays during this time that led many investors to waver. Thomas Edison himself took on more of a financial burden to support this company. And over the next 5 years, a lot of testing would occur, bringing it with lots of areas to improve upon as well. And one of the most unfortunate setbacks was in 1903 when a fire broke out in his coal plant that would grind up the coal and use for burning it. It would actually take the life of many of the workers, including his head engineer, Edward Darling. And so I do have this little note here that said, Darling, he died at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is a letter to Thomas Edison. This is pretty fun. This is an image from Thomas Edison's company. of the interior view of the kiln room. And so you can see these are long kilns here. Originally, the 60-foot ones that other companies did, they would just do one single cast. Thomas would actually patent the idea of using a number of smaller pieces combined together, which is actually the more modern way of creating these large kilns. And this little booklet was made by the Edison Portland Cement Company, 1906. And as you can see, this shows the longest rotary kilns in existence. They've been 150 foot long. And so even at the time, Thomas Edison and his company were very proud of what they had done here. So water absorbing cement, one of the most important properties of cement was making sure it was hygroscopic, the ability to absorb moisture. You don't want the roads to flood. You want that water to go right through things. Any sort of cement, really. They would test it by boiling it, and any cement that did not pass had to be aged for several months. However, this increased cost and ultimately poor boiling costs in early 1906. It led Thomas to actually hire a new chemist who could solve the problem. He did seem to solve it by increasing the amount of lime within this cement, but ultimately this would cause this problem would arise again the following December. And so the vice president, Mallory, and the chemists were forced to turn to Edison, who soon solved the problem by developing a method to artificially season the cement in a matter of hours. Mallory would call Edison's improvement the greatest one since the present fine grinding rolls were developed. We will have absolute control of our cement at all seasons of the year and be able to ship the most reliable and uniform cement going from any plant in the country. And so sometimes Thomas Edison himself did have to stick his hand in there and get some things to work. And as you can see, he had a pretty deep understanding of cement. This is the plant, the Edison Portland Cement Company. This is a drawing that was inside of that little booklet they released in New Village. You can see it's a very large property. There is a train that goes through to help move some of these materials. Henry Ford would actually purchase one of the locomotives that this company used, and that's actually, last I checked, it is up in he would bring it up to his Greenfield Village. Getting the kiln rolling. So in 1907, the cement works was regularly producing fine cement. And his most important innovation, the long rotary kiln, it had been shown to be such a significant advancement that other companies began to adopt it as well. His plant was designed to grind out 1,000 barrels of cement every 24 hours. When, again, the average cement kilns produce only about 200 barrels a day. This was a big news. Thomas Edison, he wanted to make sure that if he was doing something, he was doing it the best he possibly could and bigger than everybody else. However, there would be some cracks in the pavement. The Edison Portland Cement Company would soon become one of the nation's largest producers of cement. However, it would struggle to make sufficient profit to pay off the large fixed costs of the plant and of the research and development of that all the technology that they used. The company did have a seasonal nature because of this, and it was also aiding in the popularity of Portland cement, so much so that all these other companies are following in the same model as Thomas Edison, and it's actually oversaturating the cement market, and the cement costs were getting lower and lower. So he was making less and less money actually from being so successful. This was produced by the Edison Portland Cement Company that shows the company. You see at the top it says capacity 8,000 barrels daily, so it's a lot more. And this is kind of a few years later, this is going down. Thomas Edison, chairman of the board. William S. Mallory is still vice president. Different president, Robert H. Thompson. And they have all these different branch offices. So because all these other cement companies at the time, Portland cement companies, are all kind of competing against each other, Thomas Edison would join with other Eastern manufacturers in the Portland Cement Association to prevent ruinous competition and encourage cooperation within the industry. And as you can see from this little logo, the PCA, the Portland Cement Association, it's still going since 1916. It is I believe it's a nonprofit as well. You can still go to their website. To stimulate the use of cement, they promoted its use in all types of buildings, and Thomas Edison himself attempted to develop new ideas for cement products. The industry would continue to suffer throughout the 1910s, but ultimately, once it hit the 1920s, it would become a little bit more profitable. And again, they were still one of the country's largest producers of cement. This was produced as well by the Edison Portland Cement Company. It talks a little bit about how the process is made. I'm not going to go through all of this stuff, but if you're interested, you can pause on this screen when you're watching it later on YouTube. But a little fun thing at the end here on the bottom right, it does say, we use the longest kilns in the world and get more uniform burning. Others are copying our kilns, which shows their merit. And so, they're not throwing shade to each other. They respect even the other companies too. So Edison cement in construction. The Edison cement was used in several different building projects throughout the United States, including in canals and dams, hotels and casinos, and skyscrapers and sports stadiums. And so I have a few examples. This is the W.H. Sweeney Manufacturing Company. Um, it is in Brooklyn. And as you can see on the right here, it does still exist today. And so this was used and reinforced concrete throughout, and they used the Edison Portland cement to create this. This building, also in New York, it's called the New York Athletic Club on Traverse Island. It still exists today as well. Edison cement was exclusively used. A lot of these other projects would use cement from different companies. This specifically, they got the whole rights to make the whole building. The dam and powerhouse at Great Falls Station, and these are just a handful. They created hundreds of different buildings all throughout the United States. This is down in South Carolina. The Kisi Sauna, which unfortunately no longer exists. This big, beautiful building. It's a hotel. It was also a resort and a casino in Green Cove Springs, Florida. Unfortunately, it was torn down in 2002 for a new town hall, which I haven't checked out the new town hall there, but I feel like it's a shame looking at how beautiful this structure is. Here are some actual photographs of that building. Edison Portland cement was used exclusively, as you can see at the bottom. And then the house that Edison built. Yankee Stadium, the original Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built, of course, but it was built by Thomas Edison. His Portland Cement Company would produced thousands and thousands of barrels of cement to help make the Yankee Stadium. It no longer exists today. It has been torn down. New Yankee Stadium now exists, but nonetheless, for many years, it would stand strong. So one of the big things that Thomas Edison worked on and patented during this time were cement houses, designed by in part by Thomas Edison. He would patent the process of making these houses. The idea was he wanted low-cost cement homes for working-class families, and he developed plans for a system of casting a house in 12 hours from iron molds. This is the patent on the left here. This is the process of you have everything kind of together, and then you shoot cement up to the top. It fills this whole thing, it hardens, and you got yourself a house. Edison expected the set of molds for each house to cost about $25,000, the rest of the equipment for erecting them to be about $15,000, and the buildings themselves to cost about $1,000. So the idea would be cheap houses. Unfortunately, a lot of these homes were actually quite difficult for the people building them to get the resources to make all of this, where they wouldn't really make a lot of profit building any of these houses because it would cost so much to produce them. Uh, this is a pretty great example. We have Thomas Edison and one of these little cement houses scale model. He needed to boost the sales of Portland cement, but his goal was to not make money from the design or sale of the houses themselves. And so Thomas said, I have not gone into this with the idea of making money from it, and will be glad to license reputable parties to make molds and erect houses without any payments on account of patents. The only restrictions being that the designs of the house be satisfactory to me, that they use good material. So he wanted to make sure that they were doing a quality job, and he kind of wanted the final say there. This is an example of one of these houses actually being built, which is pretty cool. So you can see the apparatus up here. So cement gets brought up this long thing and then down here, and then the mold is made. And so these are all different cement houses made by the Edison Portland Cement Company. One of the kind of big factors on why these were useful, at least what Thomas Edison would say, is that they're fireproof. So this is actually a photo taken of one of these houses on fire. And so there would be a fire, and unfortunately, the house would burn down. It was actually a house structure next door caught fire, and it spread over here. However, as you can see, the building foundation still stands strong. From what I've read, nobody was hurt in this fire, but thankfully, they show this, the Winthrop concrete building after the fire. So it still survives, still stands strong, and you can just rebuild some of that. For his houses, Thomas Edison patented Edison waterproofing paint to use on his actual the houses themselves. So he's also trying to, do what he can. So like buy this, but also if you want to get some more Edison products for these houses, he's going to develop them. Cement phonographs. So Edison would further, inspired by Portland cement, continue to think of new and interesting ways to use cement, including adding it to his favorite invention, the phonograph. Now, Thomas Edison, these are the furniture models of phonographs. They have this huge casing in here. They also have drawers in the bottom to hold different phonographs. And they did produce a handful, at least, of these cement, basically casings for the phonograph. We have Thomas Edison standing next to one. This is some more examples. This middle one's really cool. I don't think it was made by the Edison Portland Cement Company or the Edison Phonograph Company, but you can see it's a statue. I believe that is of Aphrodite on this little pillar. But then on the right, you can see where it opens up and the phonograph is actually in there. You can see where you would stick the cylinder in there. And I have yet to see how it works, but I would really hope that the music does come out of the statue itself, out of this top that looks kind of horn-like. But then we have examples on the left and right of these cement phonograph casings. So cement patents. Thomas Edison had 1,093 U.S. patents. 94 of these patents had to do with cement. These include the apparatus for breaking rocks, which is the actual patent I have right here. And so that's basically the exact same model patent that he had, very similar for his iron ore milling company, as well as patents for cement burning kilns, his process for grinding coal, his method for fueling the kilns, cement houses, waterproofing for cement houses, and many more associated with the cement plant itself. Basically, anytime they made a little change to how a process was done, Thomas Edison made sure he could patent that process. The decline and fall of the Edison Portland Cement Company. The company would last for almost 3 decades. Unfortunately, nothing built can last forever. It can certainly try. But throughout the 1920s, even though it was the company's most successful decade, it would start to lose money. And ultimately, it, like so many others during the Great Depression, it would meet its end. Thomas Edison, he would pass away ultimately October 18th, 1931. His son Charles was placed in charge of the Edison Incorporated, a number of Edison companies, including the Edison Portland Cement Company. But by this time, the Edison Portland Cement Company is not doing too hot at all. So there would be a board meeting November 2nd, 1931, in which case the idea was put forth that they should ultimately dissolve the company. And so the president, Charles Edison, stated that the corporation had become inactive and that there were no prospects of its resuming business. He therefore recommended that the corporation be dissolved and its affairs wound up. This would happen to a number of different Edison companies, especially after he passed away. A lot of these companies during the 1930s weren't doing too hot. Some would consolidate with other companies like General Electric. This happened before then, though. Other companies like this, others would just kind of get liquidated, their things sold. And so, however, before the Edison Portland Cement Company was fully dissolved, a second company was created from the ashes. That is the Edison Cement Corporation. And so we have a little debenture note here on the left that shows this. The Edison Cement Corporation, it would acquire the materials, machinery, and locations of the Edison Portland Cement Company. So it basically was, it got the hand-me-downs from the original company. And it ultimately would survive for the next few years, basically trying to continue what the Edison Portland Cement Company did. However, it ultimately too would end 1934, so only 3 years later. It would meet its end. Madeline Edison and Charles Edison, they both would sell their stock in the company. And this time we have a little note here from Charles Edison. It's professional. He's sending a letter to his sister, but he calls her Mrs. John E. Sloan after her husband. And it says, this acknowledges receipt of your letter dated November 20, 1934, giving consent to sale of cement notes. We'll answer more fully later. So what remains? Portland cement is still seen as an incredible building choice. It's still incredibly popular, and many of the structures the Edison Portland Cement Company built still exist today. Uh, for example, these are houses. These are from Union, New Jersey, and they still stand. These are those molds that Thomas Edison and his company made. They're not the most popular houses. There are a few issues, especially if you wanted to update anything, you wanted to rewire the house. It's fully cement, so you're going to have to drill, you're going to have to do all this fun stuff. If there's any problems, it is really a hassle to take care of, but there are still many successful houses and structures all throughout different neighborhoods, really throughout the United States, that were created by the Edison Portland Cement Company. Um, and who knows, maybe in 2000 years, these houses will still stand just like the Roman Colosseum. And so here I have my works cited. Uh, as you can see, I've a lot here. Some of the biggest things I used was the Edison: A Life of Invention by Paul Israel. That was a fantastic book. Alrighty. So first, I want to, before I take any questions, I just want to say that please join us Tuesday, August 20th for a digital discussion on Annie Oakley. This is led by our lovely and fearless leader, Holly Schaefer. This will be at 10:30, and similar to this, you can go to the calendar date for that, and you can watch her presentation on Annie Oakley. All right. On that note, my name is Isaac and I've been your historian. Do you guys have any questions here at the end of my presentation? If not, you can always contact us at Edison and Ford, and you can leave comments on YouTube as well when we post this within the next week or so. Thank you so much, all of you who attended this presentation. I really appreciate it, and you all have a fantastic day. Thank you so much. You are welcome, Carol.